Sirens fill the air on a summer morning 20 years ago.
And there appears to be something ahead of the train in the track.
Explosion on train, yeah?
Or a bang on
We're trying to get down to the system, but the smoke is really heavy.
It could be serious, we're not too sure yet.
Reports flooded in, and with it, the dawning realisation the country's capital was under attack. Suicide bombers had detonated not one device, but 4 on the Underground and a packed London bus.
I don't think it was derailed, but it was black and very, very smoky. The people were panicking there were going to be a fire.
Eventually everyone starts collecting themselves and trying to stay low and cover their faces. And we hear a woman screaming. I couldn't really tell which way it was from, but...
4 men, raised in Leeds and Buckinghamshire but inspired by Al-Qaeda, took a train into central London with explosives in their rucksacks to carry out one of the worst attacks Britain has ever seen.
I've never left it, if that makes sense. There's a part of me that is still in that tunnel, that is still there screaming and crying for help.
Dan Biddle was standing next to the suicide bomber who blew up the tube leaving Edgware Road station. He lost his left leg and half of his right. He had terrible burns and ruptured organs.
No one can really explain how I survived it. My chance of survival at the time was less than 2%, so they didn't expect me to last a day, let alone be sitting here 20 years later. But then you get that feeling of guilt and you get that feeling of sadness because I did survive and others didn't. And on the train I was on, I saw people die in a horrendous way, and that doesn't leave you. And you have to try and kind of push through that to get through the day, but it never goes away and it never stops hurting.
James Adams, Samantha Badham.
52 people were killed. Their names were read out at today's memorial service at St Paul's.
Philip Beer, Anna Brandt,
William Wise, Gladys Wundoa.
Gladys Wundoa was on the number 30 bus, going home after her morning cleaning job when it blew up.
We pray for all who died in the London bombings 20 years ago.
Her daughter, Azuma, 16 then, was watching the news, calling her mum's mobile, but there was no answer.
As the hours went on, it started to become quite a nightmare, if I'm quite honest. You know, I expected her to come home at a certain time, and so I sat at the window waiting for her to walk up the gate, and she didn't. When it first happened, I didn't think I'd still be here just because of the grief.
How do you approach days like these, anniversaries like these?
I think a day like this, I really do consider like what I've lost. You know, I've got a 5-year-old, what he doesn't have in a grandmother, kind of what I don't have in a mother or a friend. As you become an adult, your parents become more like your friends and they do like your parents. So I'm really missing that. I think I'm also just missing her impact on my family and maybe where my life would have been if she had still been here.
So many lives lost and forever altered 20 years ago today. 7/7 changed London, changed the country. Afterwards, there was a huge investment in counter-terrorism funding. Parliament created a new offence of preparing for acts of terrorism, and there have been more attacks. Westminster Bridge, London Bridge, Manchester Arena. London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who, with the Prime Minister, lay a wreath at the 7th of July memorial in Hyde Park, said there will be people today planning an attack.
The terrorists every day are thinking, plotting, planning of ways to harm us. And one of the best ways we can respond and be the antidote to the hatred is by staying united, by reminding ourselves all the things we have in common, reminding ourselves that there's a reason why they're targeting us, but also to remind ourselves that, you know, London's come through this before. We've shown the world that we're a beacon for tolerance, for respect, and it's really important that we carry on being the great city we are.
20 years on from an attack which showed just how vulnerable we could be, the UK is more prepared, the intelligence is better, but the threats are more complex than ever before.
Well, earlier I spoke to Nigel Inkster, the former Director of Operations and Intelligence for the British Secret Intelligence Service. I asked him if we're safer now than we were 20 years ago.
What we saw 20 years ago, what we saw was a series of terrorist plots in the UK that were to varying degrees centrally directed from Al Qaeda in the essential no-go areas of Pakistan's tribal areas and pockets of Afghanistan. What we're now seeing is something very different. We're seeing a kind of Nike do-it-yourself terrorism, just do it, get online, get radicalized and have a go, get in a vehicle, drive it into a crowd, take a knife and plunge it into as many people as you can. And it's very difficult to anticipate this kind of thing because essentially without knowing what's going on in the heads of individuals who may well never have come to official notice for any reason, how are you going to anticipate that? It's extremely difficult.
Are extra powers needed now to tackle online radicalisation or to force the tech giants to be more aware of this and more compliant?
Well, if you task the tech giants on this, they will tell you that they are doing a great deal to try and eliminate this kind of content. But I personally believe that there is a lot more they could be doing.
And do they need to be forced into that by, would changing the law help on this or not?
Well, what we're now seeing, of course, is a situation developing in which the United States government is proving extremely defensive in relation to any legislation undertaken by other governments that affect the profitability of these corporations. So that's a factor that's got to be taken into account.
Of course, the Southport murderer, Axel Rudikabana, saw extremist material online. After that, Keir Starmer said that terrorism had changed, that the UK was facing a new threat because he wasn't motivated by a particular terrorist ideology. Do you think the nature of terrorism needs to be redefined, really?
Quite possibly, yes. I mean, I think we're always going to have individuals who are mentally unbalanced or just generally have a grudge against society that are prone to take actions of this kind. And it's not in pursuit of any particular ideology or political cause. Now, does that need to be incorporated within terrorism, or does it need to be treated as simply criminality? I think it's a difficult decision to make, and I don't think it necessarily is a good idea to overreact and overload the terrorism dimension if that potentially distracts from other priorities.
Nigel Inkster, thank you very much.